This week on the season premiere of Game on Titans, we meet our fearless gamers and see exactly what they're made of.
Let's go!
Oh, and there it is.
In the end, the two bottom Titans go head-to-head in a dreaded elimination challenge.
This does not look good for him.
Who will level up and get one step closer to the $25,000 prize? And who will fall short?
Oh!
Don't miss the season premiere of Game on Titans.
Yo, what up, everybody here in Spawn on Me land? What's good, everybody here in podcast land, Twitch land? We have a dope show. E3 is back from the dead, and also Twitch going after offline harassment. Lots of stuff to talk about, especially my Bandolin shirt. Welcome to Spawn on Me. We are right up in this piece. Let's go.
Spawn on Me is the premier podcast spotlighting people of color. Every week, we talk news, what we've been playing, and tell you who's invited to the cookout. Our show is all about talking about gaming through a prism of blackness, because we are the culture. Welcome to Brookago, y'all.
Yo, what up, everybody here on podcast land, everybody here in Brookago, everybody in Twitch land. What the deal be? I hope everybody's doing well. Hope you all doing okay. I hope everybody's doing all right. Thank you so much for coming through. This is the Spawn on Me podcast with Kahlief Adams. I'm your host, Kahlief Adams. This episode has been brought to you by PUBG Mobile. Thank you again to our friends over at PUBG Mobile for sponsoring the show. It is always fantastic to be able to have them rocking with us. So it is also amazingly cool to be able to be chilling with them and having great stuff come through on the show and being able to have them rep for all of us here in Brookago. Thank you so much to our friends over at PUBG Mobile for sponsoring the show for the past month. It's been great to be able to work with you, and we want to continue to do more cool stuff with y'all. So it'll be fantastic to do that. If you missed last week's show, you missed a banger with Chris Charla, senior manager over at ID at Xbox. We had a great conversation about everything in the space around video games and around the indie space, which was brilliant and a lot of fun. It was freaking awesome to be able to get him on the show and chop it up about all the stuff that we get a chance to do here at Spawn on Me, which is always super, super cool. So yeah, we have a good show today. It's going to be, pretty chill, pretty short. I don't think we're going to be doing a lot of stuff this week because honestly, there isn't a lot of news this week. There isn't a lot of stuff to really dig into. Again, shout out to everybody who's here watching live. I see Zenith in the chat. I see Corey in the chat. Otaku Man 5000 in the chat. Lots of great folks here coming in from the Kinda Funny community. We had a really great episode of Kinda Funny Games Daily. For the Gamescast, where we talked about Outriders. I'm going to talk a little bit about Outriders today on the show, just to get it in and talk about that. Also, shout out to Roberto Gold talking about, sorry, I'm late. You're never late. You're always on time. There's no late here in Brookago. You're always here when you're supposed to be here, or when you can get here. That's all that matters. Again, thank you everybody who's been watching our YouTube content. We're trying to get to at least 10K subscribers over there. The goal is to get everything to 20K before the end of the year. We'll see if we'll be able to do that. But yeah, I'm excited. I've been playing a lot of Outriders, a lot of stuff in the space, and talking about all the things that's going on. Wait a minute. Someone in the chat just said, let's talk about that Jeff Grubb leak regarding Kojima and Microsoft maybe publishing his next game. What? What is that about? Wait, I need to go find that out. Maybe that'll be on a extra piece of content. Maybe we'll talk about that in the post show. We also have our post show. So if you are listening and watching live on Twitch, right after we finish the main recording that usually goes out for audio on YouTube, we do about 15 minutes of just hanging out, giving love to everybody who's come through during the show, making sure that we're giving everybody a lot of love and all that kind of stuff. Oh, Konami. Maybe, okay. Maybe them picking up Konami. Got it. Okay. I got to go check that out during the post show. But again, yeah, like 10, 15 minutes, we go and hang out and chop it up with everybody in the audience. So please come by. We'd love to have you rocking with us there. A lot of good stuff to talk about. We're going to get into the news. Let's just roll right into it and make it happen. So we're going to run right into the news with What's the 411. So we have a couple of stories this week. We have 3 stories to dig into this week. You know, again, I said this show has been a little bit up and down only because the news has been up and down. We haven't had a lot of stuff to really dig into in the past couple of weeks, besides guests, of course, which have been always fantastic to be able to bring them on and have dope conversations about everything that we're doing here. But in terms of news, we're in this interesting kind of low spot in the year. Usually around this time, kind of, you know, February to July, things are a little bit chill. You don't really hear a lot of stuff. There's not a lot of stuff actually going on in that way. So it winds up being that you don't really get a lot of the conversations that you would usually kind of see happening all the time. You don't really get a chance to see and hear all the stuff that's going on because there isn't a lot of stuff going on. But there were 3 stories this week that popped in that were kind of interesting. A lot of stuff that we, you know, want to dig into and want to talk about. The first one for this week's show is all about E3. E3 and the folks over at E3 made an announcement earlier this week about them coming back and doing a virtual version of the show. Really interesting for the ESA to come back and dig into, you know, wanting to save E3. I have and I say this all the time because I really do mean it. I have very special feelings about E3. E3 still, to this day, when you ask people, and maybe it's lost that cachet in the past couple of years, but you know, when you ask most folks if they would ever want to go to E3, they still would say, yeah, like they would be like, yeah, I'd still love to go to E3. E3 would be fire to be able to go to. And I've had the, you know, the luck and the want to be able to go and been able to get passes for being on the show and having Spawn and me represent there. But we thought that the show was dead. I thought that the show, because of everything that's happened with COVID and because of everything that's been happening in space, that the show was pretty much done. And it's going to be interesting to see what they're going to do. So E3 is going to return as a reimagined all virtual event organized organizers announced on Tuesday. E3 2021 will take place June 12th to the 15th and will feature content from Nintendo, Xbox, Capcom, Konami, Ubisoft, Take-Two Interactive, Warner Brothers Games, and Koch Media. The ESA said in a news release on Tuesday. They said that we are evolving this year's E3 into a more inclusive event, but we'll look to excite the fans with major reveals and insider opportunities that make this event the indispensable center stage for video games, said Stanley Pierre-Louis, president and CEO of the ESA. We had the pleasure of interviewing Stanley some time ago. Actually, last year at DICE, we had a chance to hang out with him and do an interview with him. I'd actually really love to get Stanley back on the show to talk about what has changed in the past year for them. I think it's going to be a really interesting space for them to try to figure out what is left on the table for them. It is interesting to see some of the big players actually saying that they're going to go in terms of Nintendo, Xbox, Capcom, and Ubisoft. Microsoft has been doing fantastically on their own this year. They've really not stepped in it that much. So going into an event like E3 makes sense, but also doesn't in the grand scheme. They'll have now Bethesda to be able to do, co-branding with and co-shows with, which will be interesting on that end. But it is a really weird show that I think if we're being really honest about where things kind of lay, Jeff Keighley has taken E3's lunch. Like Jeff Keighley and everything he's doing with Summer Games Fest and the Game Awards and all the kind of activations that go on in between those things. Jeff Keighley is now E3. There's no other way to put it. There is no other way to talk about the ways that we think about big conferences besides Jeff Keighley. Jeff Keighley is the man right now to be able to do any and everything that he kind of wants to do in the video game space, because he's proven that he can pull in star power. He can wrap up a show around an event. He has every industry connection you could ever want. So he can do E3 on his own. And he's kind of doing it now with Summer Game Fest. It's kind of dope to be able to see that that's now a separate event, and it has been a separate event for a while, and it's still going strong. So it is going to be really cool to see what happens in E3. It's also funny too, because of the way that it gets pitched as this conversation that's like, E3 is a virtual event. E3 for 99% of everyone is a virtual event. It's really only for the 1% of us that are in the press that get to go to this thing live and see it. It really is actually has always been a virtual event for pretty much everyone else in the industry or in the community. If you're not going to the show directly, if you're not in part of the press, and until very recently when they opened up the show for the public, you couldn't go to E3. There were no tickets. You couldn't get in if you were not part of the press corps. It is really going to be kind of confusing to a lot of folks if they do try to do anything next year that's going to be in person. I just don't see the energy there in the same way that we've always seen E3 have. That they kind of lost a bunch of steam in the past couple of years, and especially the year off with COVID. Everyone has gone remote. Everyone is doing everything they can remote. Game demos are remote. You know, press junkets are remote. All those things now being remote change all of that stuff. Gamertag Radio in the chat says the public going to E3 made it chaos, and that's why it lost its relevance. Yeah, I agree. Like the 2 years that E3 had the public in it, it was the worst E3s that were there. At least in my 6 years of going to E3, it was the worst. Those were the worst versions because you couldn't get your job done, and it didn't benefit the public who went. You had to stand in lines like you were at PAX, and it's even worse because E3 just didn't have the structure and the knowledge of how to run a fan show, and it was pretty bad for everybody who had spoken to at those shows and then after those shows to be able to say, like, did you enjoy your time at E3? And most people said no. They're like, I wasted my money. So E3 coming back this year is going to be wild. It's going to be happening again June 12th through the 15th. Again, we'll all be watching from home. We'll all be kind of checking that stuff out to see what they're going to do. And we're going to wind up seeing what that means for the ESA, what that means for, the folks who are participating. Do they hold their good stuff for E3 or do they hold their good stuff for Summer Games Fest? I would probably say Summer Games Fest makes the most sense to be able to do it there because it gets more eyes. People care more. Keeley is going to be able to do it with star power, and you get a chance to kind of broaden it out and balance it out. So really interesting times for E3 in a bigger way, which is going to be very, very interesting. Next story up is something that we talked about first here on Spawn on Me when we had DJ Wheat and Angela Hessian, VP of Trust and Safety on Twitch, come to the show, earlier in the year to talk about some of their new directions when it comes to their transparency report and what they're trying to do with enforcement of some of the policies that they are kind of enacting across the industry and across the Twitch community. On Wednesday, Twitch announced an expansion of its hateful conduct and harassment policy that takes into account behavior taking place off the platform. Actually, let me read the blog post. So and before I read the blog post really quick, one of the things that when myself and other folks in the space who've had the ear of folks at Twitch through kind of what's the best way to put it? Like through the ambassador program, and then also through activations that have happened throughout the year, they'll usually come to us and say, "Hey, we're gonna do a little bit of a change. We'd love to run it past you." There are folks within the Twitch universe where there are times when you get a chance to talk about some of the things that are coming down the line and say, like, here's maybe where you want to tweak it. How do you want to kind of see it? One of the things that has been part of that conversation for a long time has been the way that Twitch has been able to enforce some of its policies, both on platform and off platform. Off platform has become a much more problematic space because of folks like Keemstar, folks like the Quartering, folks like, all the other bad actors in the space who have decided that they will then pick on certain Twitch streamers and then kind of blow up their lives because they have nothing else to do. And it's been a hard thing to try to figure out, both from the YouTube side and now from the Twitch side, of like, who's going to throw the first salvo to say, we want to try to figure out a way to deal with that. What they've said is that their current guidelines state that in some serious cases where there is available verifiable evidence, we will take action against users for hateful conduct or harassment that occurs off Twitch services, meaning on social media, good, on other online services, interesting, or even offline when directed at members of the Twitch community. We are updating and expanding our approach to off-service enforcement, which falls now into two categories. Category 1, someone is harassed on Twitch, as well as off Twitch. And when this happens, we will take into account verifiable off-service behaviors of statements that relate to an incident that took place on Twitch. For example, if we're reviewing a harassment report about an incident that happened live on stream, related or continued harassment on Twitter could be taken into account when reported to us. This is how our current off-service policy works in the vast majority of cases and will not change. Category 2, we will now enforce against serious offenses that pose a substantial safety risk to the Twitch community, even if these actions occur entirely off Twitch. Examples of these include deadly behavior or violent extremism, terrorist activities or recruitment, explicit and or credible threats of mass violence, i.e. threats against a group, people, event, or location where people would gather, leadership or membership in a known hate group, carry out or acting as an accomplice to non-consensual sexual activities and or sexual assault, sexual exploitation of children, such as grooming and solicitation, distribution of underage sexual materials, actions that would directly and explicitly compromise the physical safety of the Twitch community, such as threatening of violence at a Twitch event, explicit or incredible threats against Twitch, including Twitch staff. Sorry. Whew, that's a lot of stuff. I'm just skimming through some of it. And it looks like it says that there will be a connection to some third-party investigatory spaces that they will then help do the legwork of trying to connect the dots, basically, to help move that forward. I'm gonna dig into it a little bit more. I haven't had enough time to dig into the full version of what this means. But the thing that I'm hoping for is exactly what I just talked about a minute ago, is you have these bad actors who have decided that they will then use and weaponize their audiences, even if they try to cover their asses and say, hey, everybody, I've made this video. Don't go harass the subject of the video, because that then leads to potential legal ramifications for me. This tells me now that, at least in theory and in practice, what we'll see hopefully happen is that there be a way to level that complaint up to Twitch to say, hey, this person in YouTube land is messing with me, has either doxed me or has let their community, and it's hard because your communities, you can't control everyone, but there has to be some repercussions for the actions of the communities that surround your work and surround your content. So it will be really interesting to see what now changes and how the reports will go up, because if we are to believe some of the folks who have said that they're not doing this harassment, there is a really gray area for being able to pull in that information in a way that is verifiable. I don't know now if you can make the legal jump from, hey, you made a hateful video or a video that is supposed to expose me or expose whoever the subject is, and therefore, does that qualify if it feels like there's malice intent in terms of the videos that get made? Most of them feel like malice intent. Even if you're just like, well, I have an opinion about a person, so I just made a video about it. What's the purpose of that video? It's not informative. It doesn't inform anybody of anything that has value. But I think that really depends. There's a lot of gray area to see where this is going to wind up leading. It's really a lot of gray area for both the, aggrieved and the aggressor. I do wonder if you were to look at some of the things that we've seen in the not too distant past that have happened, if those things would hit the mark that would lead to some investigations happening if those things came back up. So, if you, had people who were all in my mentions on Twitter for some stuff that I had said, and if I was like, hey, this is harassment, what does that mean? Right? Luckily no one has come to my home, or no one has tried to dox me, or no one has tried to swat me, any of that kind of stuff. But it is one of those conversations of like, what does that actually mean in real practice? Like, what does this actually mean? So I do wonder if this now is retroactive. Probably not, because that's not the way that Twitch has kind of done things. When they enforced their new rules, it didn't really take into account anything that happened prior, even though the damage was already done. It will be really wild to see what happens next, though. I would love to get Angela Hessian back on the show. I would love to get folks back on the podcast to talk about what this means and how the enactment will wind up happening. The enforcement, will happen for some of this stuff. I just don't know what that means in the grand scheme for how that all works. It will be something, again, that I think hopefully will keep people out of, I don't know, maybe out of the space where you've seen folks like The Quartering talk about on his YouTube channels about, I had a meeting at YouTube and they basically said for me to kind of leave people alone who are, who don't have as many followers as I do, because it's more work for me and it doesn't really do anything for my brand, as opposed to stop being an asshole. That was the reasoning behind wanting to stop doing stuff, which I find to be really wild and weird. But we will see now what happens alongside these incidents. We'll see if Twitch broadens out even more of their stances, and I applaud them for being proactive in this moment and saying, it's a thing that our community has asked for a long time, is we want to make sure we're knocking out offline abuse and offline stuff. How do we figure out a way to do that in a good way so that we are actually doing the work of making things better? I think that's going to be very, very important to be able to have as a thing going forward. I'm happy to see that happen. I'm happy to see that be a thing, and we'll see now what happens after that, because who knows? Who knows if it's actually going to do any good? Who knows if it's actually going to make a change in the way that we see the conversation happen? Who knows if we're going to be able to, actually bring hold people's feet to the fire, who are the bad actors in our community, and see what they're going to be able to do. It is very, very intriguing to see what's going to wind up happening there for all of those folks. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to check out a sponsored video from our folks over at PUBG Mobile. Again, thank you, our friends over at PUBG, for sponsoring the show. It's been fantastic working with you. We've been wanting to do this for a while, and we're continuing to do stuff. We've been hanging out and doing cool stuff with them all month, so it's been really, really cool to be able to do cool stuff. So we'll be right back after this. We'll see you in a minute. Welcome back to the Spawn Me podcast with Kahlief Adams. I'm your host, Kahlief Adams. This is episode 382 of our show. If you missed the first half, you missed a banger of a beginning of a podcast. Damn it. Talked about E3, talked about Twitch now changing up some of their policies to kind of better fix offline harassment. There's been a lot of, again, interesting conversations happening within that space. Our last news story of the week is all about Rachel Valkyrie Hofstetter, who joined 100 Thieves, I think a couple of years ago. She's a well-known streamer. She's been in the streaming game for a long time. She announced today that she is, and in quotes, "I am proud to be one of the first women co-owners in esports and beyond excited for our future together." She is now a co-owner alongside Nadeshot of one of the biggest brands in esports, the 100 Thieves. It is a big deal for her to be one of the few women co-owners in that space. We know that folks like Erin Ashley Simon, fam of the show, is also a co-owner of, XSET. We also know now that Nadeshot has also brought in huge YouTuber and streamer Jack Courage Dunlap. So JD Courage is now a co-owner as well. It is wild because they are going to make so much money. They have made a redonkulous amount of money already, and now they're going to make even more, talking about Valkyrie and Courage in the space now as co-owners of one of the, again, biggest and most well-known esports teams on the planet. In 100 Thieves. Haig said, and that's Nadeshot, he says, "In my mind, it's probably the most important day in 100 Thieves history. I could have never predicted that we would be sitting here welcoming Valkyrie and Courage officially as co-owners of 100 Thieves." Lots of folks reached out to give them some love and give them some props. It is cool. It is a boss move for sure to be able to have them now a part of this big conglomerate, this huge team. It does make me again reflect on the fact that there are very few POCs in the esports space from a management perspective, from a coaching perspective, and even less from a player perspective, especially when we talk about black and brown folks. It is. I've still not seen a fully sponsored black esports team. There are very few, if any. We mostly reside within the fighting game community and sometimes in the shooter community, but we're nowhere to be found in the MOBA space in a real way, at least sponsored. So again, I think that this is good news for them. The rich kind of get richer with this move. But it is a good moment for the space, right? Where you get a chance to say, these folks are making it happen. And again, 100 Thieves is a really smart and well managed brand. So I would love to see what this looks like for, again, folks like XSET who are doing things from a very culture standpoint. They're digging into black culture, hip hop culture in a way that no one else has done yet. And I think that that's an important space to kind of occupy currently. But I wonder, what this means for them now. Like, is it a thing where Nadeshot kind of moves to the back a little bit to maybe do more operation stuff? Does Valkyrie do Valkyrie and Courage now kind of be more of the figureheads? We'll see. I doubt that because Nadeshot likes to be in the spotlight. But it will be interesting to see what they wind up doing now with all three of them as the kind of faces of management when it comes to 100 Thieves. Yeah, cool stuff. I think it's gonna be dope to be able to see what happens when it comes to that, and then we'll see what happens when they move forward. I think 100 Thieves is still kind of in the middle of a lot of different tournaments. They're not winning as many things as they would probably hope to win. but they are still in the space as a name and a brand in a heavy way. They continue to do really cool stuff on the merch side, and they continue to build out the brand of what the streamer life can be, what the esports space can be when you have a lot of super young folks kind of running the outfit. So yeah, cool stuff. I mean, it's going to be wild. It's a new day for a lot of different companies. It's a new day for a lot of different teams. It's going to be one of those things where we're going to wind up trying to figure out who's going to be next now. Who's going to be the next group? Who's going to be the next owner? Who's going to be the next, team that's going to come up that's going to occupy that space and give 100 Thieves a run for their money, because they have star power in ways that we hadn't seen before. Valkyrie was doing streams with AOC, lots of different big time streams where she's been a part of it. It was that stream did she racked up over 3.3 million subscribers on YouTube. And she only left Twitch to move to YouTube in January. So since January, she's gotten 3.3 million subscribers on YouTube, which is wild. And she also won Content Creator of the Year at the Game Awards last year. So who knows? Again, who knows how this actually works? Ginger Sheep in the chat says, Next team is the Spawn on Me team, and all POC owned and sponsored by Ka. Look, I don't know if I'd ever want to own an esports team. I think if I did, it would have to be culture first. Like, culture would have to be a huge part of the way it works. Because honestly, I think, and I say this both in my day job and in my Spawn on Me job, there's no one who has really knocked down the conversation or really has pulled in a conversation about why culture is so important. And I mean, when I say culture, I mean, whichever cultures are actually moving things forward from a entertainment standpoint, because that's the biggest gap that we see now in the esports space, is not one of technology, not one of having games in the conversation. It's a culture gap and a diversity gap, and that those two things intertwined will have a very, very different visual aesthetic. They'll have a different code of conduct that'll bring different people to the space, and not in the ways that we saw when athletes were buying into sports teams because it was the in thing to do, because everyone got excited about the word esports and didn't know what it was when they were spending money. The only ones who really did that well from that perspective, who understood the culture, was Echo Fox and Evil Geniuses now, because they have a black woman running it. So lots of cool stuff in that space to dig into. It is a highly lucrative spot. Millions and millions of dollars runs through esports. And to be able to get a piece of that pie is the thing that we should, as a community, think of ways that we can be in that space in a real way. Because I don't want us to get left behind in this new digital divide that winds up being there. So, word. Great stuff. Really quick before we get up out of here for this episode, the other things that are happening right now in terms of the space and in terms of the conversation is, I've been playing a whole crap ton of Outriders. I've been playing a ton of Outriders, rocking my Trickster class, getting that Trickster class up, and making it dope. We have a lot of stuff there to talk about very, very soon. Shout out to Polarin in the chat. She's like, I missed the show. It'll be up on YouTube. And also, we've been doing some cool stuff. We have DICE coming up very, very shortly. I have another announcement to talk about fairly soon. We'll talk about that probably on Twitter and then talk about it as soon as it gets announced on the next show. We're looking to get some fantastic guests on the show as well. I've been talking behind the scenes about snagging some other folks because they've been really excited to check out and be a part of the show. And also, we have our after show, which we're going to do right after this. About 15 minutes, we're going to give some love to all the folks who followed and thanked us and subscribed to us here on Twitch. And if you are part of the internet, if you're part of the podcast union, part of the podcast fam, please come through and watch the show one night when we do it live, or check out the work that we're doing over at Spawn on Me Podcast on Instagram. We're growing that as well. We're doing a little bit of content happening over there as well. So we have some dope stuff in the works. I'm gonna be recording my Ask Ka Anything content this week. We have some great questions. We're doing a giveaway with Govi. They have their RGBIC lights that they're going to be giving away. We've been talking about basketball, talking about Final Four and all that kind of stuff. We were giving out some lights at the end of the week. So remember to go to speakpipe.com/spawnonme and leave me a voicemail. The funniest, most interesting question that I get will get a set of lights from them. We're going to be giving that away very soon. And we have a couple other contests we're going to be doing very, very, very shortly. So we have lots of fun stuff coming in for all of you at home. So until then, we're going to get up out of here for this week's Spawn on Me. Again, check us out on all podcast platforms. Check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/Spawn on Me. Check out our new merch that we have out into the world, bit.ly/SOM Gear. We have dope stuff from our friends over at High Score Tees. So very, very cool new products going out right there. And yeah, we have a lot of fun stuff coming in and more things working in the space. So much love to you all in Brookago. We're going to get up out of here. We'll see you all next week for the Spawn on Me podcast. If you're here on Twitch, hang out for a couple of minutes where we go over and hang out over on the post show. But everybody else in podcasting, we'll see you all next week. Much love and peace.